Cowboy promised he'd marry the Apache girl who saved him. Years later, she returned for him. Daniel lived alone at the edge of a dusty western town, where the wind moved slowly across open land, and the sky always seemed too wide for one person to fill. People knew him as a quiet cowboy who worked harder than anyone else but spoke less than most. He ran a small ranch that had seen better days. The wooden fence leaned in places, and the barn carried marks from storms that came and went without warning. Every morning before sunrise, he walked through the fields checking cattle and repairing whatever needed fixing. His routine never changed, and maybe that was how he kept his thoughts from drifting too far into the past. The townspeople respected him, but few truly knew him. Some said he used to laugh more when he was younger. Others believed he once had someone special but lost her to time or distance. Daniel never confirmed or denied anything. He simply nodded when greeted and continued walking. Inside, though, he carried memories that returned whenever the desert wind grew quiet. Years earlier, Daniel had been different. Back then, he chased adventure, believing life would always give him another chance to start over. One summer, while tracking stolen cattle across rough land, he rode farther than he ever had before. The sky turned dark without warning, and a powerful storm swept across the desert. The wind roared like a living thing, throwing sand and rain together until the world blurred into gray shadows. His horse struggled against the storm, and Daniel tried to find shelter, but the land was unfamiliar. He lost direction quickly. As night fell, the temperature dropped sharply. Daniel became weak from exhaustion and thirst. When he finally fell from his horse near a narrow canyon, he believed he might not survive until morning. The last thing he remembered before losing consciousness was the sound of distant footsteps and a soft voice speaking words he did not understand. When he opened his eyes again, he found himself inside a small shelter made from natural materials. Warm light flickered nearby. His wounds were cleaned and water rested beside him. A young Apache girl sat quietly near the entrance. Her name was Tala. She watched him carefully, not with fear but with calm curiosity. Daniel tried to sit up, but she gently stopped him, signaling that he needed rest. Though their languages and backgrounds were different, they found simple ways to communicate. She offered food, and he accepted with gratitude. Over the next few days, he learned that her tribe lived hidden among rocks and trees deeper within the canyon. They valued peace and avoided contact with outsiders unless necessary. Tala had found him while gathering herbs and convinced her elders that helping him was the right thing to do. Daniel observed their way of life with respect. Everything moved at a slower pace than he was used to. People listened before speaking. They shared responsibilities and showed deep care for the land. Tala often walked with him when he was strong enough, teaching him how to notice small signs in nature, the way birds moved, the meaning of footprints in dust, and how silence could carry more meaning than words. Their bond grew naturally. Daniel told stories about ranch life and the challenges of surviving alone. Tala listened closely, sometimes laughing at his stubbornness, sometimes offering quiet advice that surprised him with its wisdom. He realized that she saw the world differently, and that perspective changed how he viewed his own struggles. Evenings became their favorite time. They would sit near the canyon edge watching the sun set behind distant hills. The sky turned gold, then red, then deep blue filled with stars. In those moments, Daniel felt something he had not felt in years: peace. He stopped worrying about the ranch or the expectations waiting back home. Instead, he simply existed in the moment. As his strength returned, Daniel knew he would eventually need to leave. His ranch depended on him, and he could not disappear forever. The thought of leaving created a strange weight in his chest. On his final evening there, he and Tala walked to the same place where they had spent many sunsets together. He struggled to find the right words. Gratitude alone felt too small for what she had given him. She had not only saved his life, but also helped him see himself differently. Without thinking too deeply, he made a promise. He told her that one day he would return, and when he did, he wanted to build a future with her, maybe even marry her if she wished. The words surprised both of them. Tala smiled softly, unsure whether he meant it as a joke or something more serious. Daniel felt embarrassed but did not take it back. The promise felt true in that moment, shaped by emotion and hope. The next morning, the tribe helped him prepare for the journey home. Tala guided him back to the edge of familiar land where he could find his way. When it was time to say goodbye, neither spoke much. They simply nodded, understanding that some things did not need long explanations. Daniel rode away carrying more than supplies. He carried a new sense of purpose. During the long ride home, he imagined returning soon, perhaps within weeks or months. He believed the promise would be easy to keep. But when he reached town, reality greeted him quickly. The ranch had suffered damage during his absence. Fences were broken, cattle scattered, and bills waited unpaid. Neighbors had tried to help, but the work required his full attention. Days turned into long weeks of repair and recovery. Despite exhaustion, memories of the canyon stayed with him. He tried to describe Tala to others, but stopped himself. Something about that experience felt too personal to share casually. At night, when he sat alone under the stars, he replayed their conversations in his mind. He planned to return as soon as things stabilized. Yet every time he thought he could leave, another problem appeared. A storm damaged part of the barn, a sick animal required care, or a financial issue demanded immediate attention. Each delay felt temporary at first, but slowly time began to stretch. Still, he held on to the feeling that he had changed. He treated people differently, speaking with more patience and kindness. Some neighbors noticed and joked that the desert must have taught him lessons. He only smiled quietly. One evening, as he watched the sun set behind his own fields, he remembered the exact moment he made that promise. He wondered if Tala thought about it too. The thought brought both warmth and worry. He told himself he would return soon, that promises made from the heart could not be forgotten. After returning from the canyon, Daniel believed he would go back soon. At first, he kept his promise alive in small ways. He marked the path he thought would lead him back, carefully drawing maps in the dirt outside his cabin. He planned supplies for a long ride and even repaired his saddle to make sure he would be ready when the right moment came. But life on the ranch moved faster than his plans. The weeks after his return were filled with endless work. The storm that had taken him away had also damaged large parts of his property. Broken fences allowed cattle to wander far, and some animals never returned. Water wells needed repair, and the barn roof leaked whenever it rained. Daniel worked from sunrise to late night, trying to rebuild everything with his own hands. Neighbors stopped by occasionally, offering help or checking on him. They noticed he seemed quieter than before, but also calmer in a way they could not explain. He listened more and spoke less. Sometimes, when someone complained about small problems, he would smile slightly as if remembering something important. The lessons he learned from Tala stayed with him, shaping his actions even when he did not mention her name. At night, when the ranch finally grew silent, Daniel sat outside and watched the stars. Those moments reminded him of the canyon. He could almost hear Tala's voice telling him to slow down and notice the world around him. He told himself he would return soon, just after finishing repairs, just after selling cattle at market, just after one more season of work. Months passed quietly. The ranch slowly recovered, but new challenges replaced old ones. Prices at the market dropped, forcing him to work harder just to keep the land. A harsh winter arrived earlier than expected, bringing cold winds that froze water troughs and weakened livestock. Every day required careful attention, and leaving even for a short time felt impossible. Despite the pressure, Daniel never forgot the promise. Sometimes he touched the small bead necklace Tala had given him before he left the canyon. He kept it inside his pocket, hidden from others but close to his heart. It reminded him of who he wanted to be, not just a man surviving day by day, but someone capable of connection and hope. One afternoon, while repairing a fence near the edge of his property, Daniel met a traveler passing through town. The traveler mentioned seeing an Apache group moving across distant land. Daniel felt his heart race. He asked questions quickly, hoping for details that could lead him back to Tala. But the traveler knew little and had already moved on by the time Daniel finished thinking of more questions. That night, Daniel considered leaving immediately to search for her. He packed supplies and prepared his horse. Yet as he stood ready to ride, he looked at the ranch and hesitated. If he left without preparation, everything he had worked to rebuild might collapse again. He told himself he needed just a little more time. Time became his greatest challenge. Days blended into weeks and weeks into years. Slowly, the urgency he once felt softened into a quiet ache. He still remembered every detail of the canyon, the sound of wind through rocks, the warmth of shared conversations, but the distance between past and present grew larger. Meanwhile, Tala lived her own journey far from Daniel's ranch. After he left, she continued her training as a healer within her tribe. Elders recognized her strong spirit and patience. She learned how to gather plants for medicine, how to listen to the body's signals, and how to support others during times of struggle. Though she worked hard, she sometimes walked alone at sunset, remembering the cowboy who promised to return. Many people in her community asked why she waited for someone from another world. She never answered directly. Instead, she said that promises had meaning even when time tested them. She did not know if Daniel would come back, but she chose to believe that their meeting had purpose. Back at the ranch, Daniel became known as someone reliable. He helped neighbors during difficult times and gained respect throughout the town. A local woman named Clara began visiting more often, bringing food or offering conversation. She was kind and patient, and many believed she and Daniel would eventually become a couple. Daniel appreciated her friendship but never allowed the relationship to grow deeper. Something inside him held back, as if a part of his life remained unfinished. Clara noticed this but respected his boundaries, sensing that his heart carried memories he was not ready to share. One summer evening, Daniel finally decided to search for the canyon again. He packed carefully, leaving instructions for a trusted neighbor to watch over the ranch. The journey was long and uncertain. He followed the path he remembered, but the desert had changed. Storms reshaped the land, trails faded, and familiar landmarks looked different. After days of searching, he reached an area that felt close to where he had once been. Yet he could not find the hidden camp or any sign of Tala's tribe. The silence of the desert felt heavier than before. He called out once, hoping someone might hear, but only the wind answered. Exhausted and discouraged, Daniel returned home with a heavy heart. He began to wonder if he had waited too long. Perhaps the tribe had moved far away. Perhaps Tala no longer thought about him. These thoughts stayed with him, creating a quiet sadness he rarely showed. Years continued to pass. Daniel's hair showed signs of gray, and lines appeared around his eyes from long days under the sun. Despite this, he remained strong and respected. The ranch grew stable again, and younger workers sometimes came to learn from him. Inside, however, he often felt divided between past and present. Some nights he believed he should forget the promise and focus only on the life in front of him. Other nights he felt certain that destiny would bring Tala back into his path somehow. One day, while attending a local gathering, he overheard travelers speaking about an Apache healer who helped communities across distant lands. Something about the description sounded familiar. Daniel listened closely, hoping for confirmation, but the travelers moved on before he could ask more. The possibility that Tala might still be out there filled him with both hope and regret. He realized that even if he never saw her again, she had changed him forever. The kindness he showed others, the patience he practiced, and the respect he carried for nature all came from what she taught him. As seasons changed again, Daniel learned to live with uncertainty. He stopped waiting for a specific moment, and instead focused on becoming someone worthy of the promise he once made. Yet deep inside, he never stopped wondering whether fate would give him another chance. Whether one day he would look up and see her standing before him again, reminding him of a promise spoken under a glowing desert sky. Years passed quietly, leaving small marks on everything. Daniel knew. The ranch grew stronger under his care, and the town slowly changed as new families arrived and old buildings were replaced. Daniel himself changed too. His movements became more careful, his voice calmer, and his eyes carried the weight of experience. He was respected as a man who kept his word in business and helped others without asking for anything in return. Yet inside, one promise remained unfinished, like a song that ended before its final note. Most mornings began the same way. Daniel woke before sunrise, brewed coffee over a small fire, and watched the sky shift from dark blue to soft orange. These quiet moments were when memories returned strongest. Sometimes he remembered the canyon clearly, the cool air between rocks, the soft sound of Tala's footsteps, and the feeling of peace he had known there. Other times, the memories felt distant, like stories told about someone else's life. Over time, he had learned to live without expecting anything from the past. He told himself that some moments were meant to remain memories rather than promises waiting to be fulfilled. Even so, he never removed the small bead necklace from his pocket. He touched it whenever he felt uncertain, as if it reminded him of a part of himself he refused to lose. One afternoon, the town felt unusually busy. Traders arrived with wagons full of goods, travelers passed through with stories from distant places, and children ran through the streets laughing. Daniel finished his work early and rode into town to pick up supplies. He greeted familiar faces and listened politely to conversations about weather, market prices, and upcoming events. While tying his horse near the general store, he noticed something different, a stranger walking calmly through the crowd. The woman moved with quiet confidence, her posture straight and her eyes observant. She wore clothing that reflected both tradition and strength, and people watched her with curiosity. Daniel felt a strange sense of familiarity even before she turned toward him. When their eyes met, time seemed to slow. For a moment he could not breathe. The years between past and present disappeared, replaced by the memory of a young girl standing at the canyon's edge. It was Tala. She had changed in ways he could not fully describe. Her presence felt stronger, her expression wiser, but the same calm energy surrounded her. She walked toward him without hesitation, as if she had always known where to find him. Daniel struggled to find words. He had imagined this moment many times, yet nothing prepared him for the reality of seeing her again. Tala spoke his name gently, and hearing it from her voice felt like stepping back into a forgotten chapter of his life. The town grew quiet around them as curious onlookers noticed their reunion. Daniel removed his hat respectfully, unsure whether to smile or apologize first. Finally, he managed to ask how she found him. Tala explained that she had heard stories about a rancher who helped others and carried himself with quiet strength. The description sounded familiar, and she followed small clues until they led her here. They walked together away from the busy street, choosing a quiet place near the edge of town where they could talk without interruption. At first, conversation felt slow, shaped by years of distance. They spoke about simple things, the journey she made, the changes in the land, and the passing of time. Tala explained that after Daniel left, her tribe moved many times. Changing seasons and shifting conditions forced them to travel farther than before. She trained as a healer and learned from elders who believed she carried strong potential. Over the years, she visited many communities, offering help wherever it was needed. Daniel listened carefully, feeling both pride and regret. He admired her strength but could not ignore the guilt building inside him. Eventually, he spoke about his own journey, the struggles at the ranch, the attempts he made to return, and the times he searched but failed to find her. Tala listened without judgment. She did not accuse him or express anger. Instead, she said that life often moves in unexpected directions, and that promises must grow with time rather than remain frozen in one moment. Her calm acceptance surprised him more than any harsh words would have. As the sun lowered in the sky, Daniel asked why she came back now. Tala paused before answering. She said that she returned because she wanted to know whether the promise they shared still held meaning or if it had become only a memory carried by two separate lives. The question stayed between them like a quiet challenge. Daniel realized he could not answer quickly. His feelings were complicated, happiness at seeing her again, shame for not returning sooner, and fear that he might disappoint her once more. They agreed to spend time together before making any decisions. Tala stayed in town, and Daniel introduced her to neighbors who welcomed her with cautious curiosity. Some people were friendly and respectful, while others kept their distance, unsure how to react to someone from a different background. Daniel noticed how gracefully Tala handled every interaction. She spoke calmly, observed more than she talked, and treated everyone with kindness. Slowly, even those who felt uncertain began to respect her presence. Over the following days, they worked side by side on the ranch. Tala helped care for injured animals and offered advice based on her knowledge of natural remedies. Daniel watched her move through the fields with confidence, as if she belonged there. Despite the comfort of shared work, emotional tension remained. Both carried questions they had not yet asked. During quiet evenings, they sat outside watching the sky just as they once had in the canyon. Sometimes they laughed about old memories. Other times, silence filled the space between them. One evening, Daniel finally admitted how often he thought about returning, but felt trapped by responsibilities. He confessed that part of him feared she might not want to see him again after so many years. Tala responded gently, saying that waiting had been difficult but also meaningful. The promise gave her strength during moments when she felt uncertain about her own path. Their reunion did not feel like the ending of a story, but the beginning of something new, something shaped by growth rather than nostalgia. Both understood that they were no longer the same people who stood at the canyon years ago. They had changed through experience, and now they needed to decide whether their lives could truly come together again. As night settled over the ranch, Daniel realized that fate had given him another chance. The promise he once believed lost had returned to stand before him in living form. Yet this time, he knew that words alone would not be enough. Actions, patience, and understanding would determine what happened next. The stars above felt brighter than usual, reminding him of the evening when he first made that promise. He wondered whether the path ahead would lead to fulfillment or another farewell. Either way, he understood that the story between them was far from finished, and the choices they made now would shape everything that followed. After Tala's return, life at the ranch changed in ways Daniel did not expect. The day still began early, and the work remained demanding, but now there was a quiet energy that made everything feel different. Tala moved through the land with calm confidence, learning the rhythm of the ranch while also bringing her own ways of seeing the world. Daniel noticed that even the animals seemed more relaxed around her, as if they sensed her patience and steady presence. At first, their routine felt almost easy. They shared meals, worked side by side, and talked during long evenings under the open sky. But beneath the calm surface, questions remained. The years apart had shaped both of them, and now they needed to understand whether their lives could truly move in the same direction. The townspeople watched with curiosity. Some admired Tala's strength and kindness, especially after she helped a local child recover from illness using natural remedies combined with careful observation. Others remained unsure, whispering quietly about change and tradition. Daniel heard the whispers but chose not to respond. Instead, he focused on showing respect and trust through his actions. One morning, a ranch worker named Luke approached Daniel privately. Luke had worked with him for years and spoke honestly. He warned that people might question Daniel's judgment if he changed too much too quickly. Daniel listened carefully, understanding that Luke spoke from concern rather than criticism. Still, he felt a growing determination to make decisions based on his own heart rather than fear of others' opinions. Tala also faced her own challenges. Though she remained calm, Daniel noticed moments when she stood quietly at the edge of the fields, looking toward distant hills as if remembering another place. When he asked if she missed her tribe, she answered honestly. She said she missed the sense of belonging that came from shared traditions, but she also felt drawn to this new chapter of her life. They decided to take things slowly. Instead of rushing toward a future defined by the old promise, they focused on understanding who they had become. Tala asked Daniel about the hardest years he faced, and he shared stories he had never told anyone else, times when he nearly lost the ranch, nights when loneliness felt heavy, and moments when he doubted whether he deserved happiness. In return, Tala spoke about her journey as a healer. She described traveling across different lands, helping communities during difficult times, and learning from elders who taught her that strength comes from patience rather than force. Daniel listened with admiration, realizing how much she had grown since the day they first met. One afternoon, a problem arose that tested both of them. Several cattle became weak and stopped eating, and no one knew the cause. The ranch depended on those animals, and losing them would mean serious trouble. Daniel felt pressure from neighbors who expected quick solutions. Some suggested selling the sick animals immediately to avoid greater loss. Tala asked for time to observe before making decisions. She studied the animals carefully, noticing small details others overlooked. She examined the grass, the water source, and the changing weather patterns. After a day of observation, she suggested a different approach, moving the herd to another area where the soil and plants looked healthier. Daniel trusted her judgment, even though others doubted. The decision required extra work and carried risk, but within days the cattle began to recover. The success changed how many people in town viewed Tala. Respect replaced uncertainty, and conversations shifted from quiet doubt to genuine admiration. Despite this positive change, emotional challenges continued. One evening, Daniel invited Tala to a gathering in town. Music filled the air and people laughed around lantern light. At first, Tala seemed comfortable, but Daniel noticed moments when she felt out of place. The customs and conversations were different from what she knew, and some people asked questions that felt too personal. After leaving the gathering, they walked silently for a long time. Finally, Tala admitted that she sometimes felt caught between two worlds. She respected Daniel's community, but did not want to lose her own identity. Daniel realized that loving someone meant more than welcoming them into your life. It required understanding and protecting what made them who they were. The next day, Daniel suggested they visit the canyon together, the place where everything began. The journey would take time, but he believed returning there might help them understand what their promise truly meant now. They prepared carefully and rode across open land for several days. Along the way, they talked more deeply than ever before. They shared fears about the future and hopes they rarely spoke aloud. Daniel admitted that he once thought promises were simple, something you said and then followed without question. Now he understood that promises required growth and constant choice. When they finally reached the canyon, memories returned strongly. The rocks looked familiar and the air carried the same quiet peace Daniel remembered. They walked together to the spot where they had once watched the sunset. Neither spoke at first. Silence felt more meaningful than words. Tala explained that she had returned not only to see Daniel, but also to understand whether their connection could exist in the present, not just in memory. She did not want to live inside a promise made years ago if it no longer reflected who they were now. Daniel listened carefully. He realized that part of him had been holding on to the past instead of building something new. Standing there, he understood that their story needed to move forward, shaped by both of their experiences. On the journey back to the ranch, their bond felt stronger but also more honest. They no longer avoided difficult conversations. Instead, they spoke openly about expectations and fears. Tala wanted to continue helping others as a healer, even if it meant traveling at times. Daniel wanted stability but also understood that love required flexibility. As they returned to town, people noticed a change in both of them. They seemed more connected, more certain of themselves. Daniel began including Tala in decisions about the ranch, showing trust not just privately but publicly. This action signaled to others that she was not simply a visitor but someone important in his life. Still, the question of their future remained unanswered. Daniel knew he wanted to renew the promise he once made, but he also understood that it had to come from a deeper place now. Tala needed to see that he truly understood her world and was willing to meet her halfway. One evening, as they watched the sky turn gold over the fields, Daniel felt the weight of everything they had shared. The years apart, the reunion, and the challenges they faced together. He realized that the next step would require courage, not just from him but from both of them. The wind moved softly through the grass, carrying the feeling that change was near. Their story had reached a point where decisions could no longer be delayed. Whatever came next would shape not only their relationship, but also the life they would build together, blending two different paths into one shared journey. The days after their journey back from the canyon felt different for both Daniel and Tala. Something unspoken had settled between them, not pressure, but clarity. They were no longer unsure strangers trying to reconnect with an old memory. Instead, they moved through the ranch and town with a shared understanding that their story had reached an important moment. Daniel noticed how naturally Tala fit into the rhythm of his life. She woke early, walked through the fields with calm focus, and treated every task with patience. Workers who once felt uncertain now greeted her with respect. She listened carefully when others spoke and offered help without trying to change everything at once. Slowly, she became part of the daily flow of the ranch. At the same time, Tala noticed changes in Daniel. He no longer held onto silence the way he once did. He spoke more openly about his thoughts and asked for her opinion when making decisions. She saw how much effort he made to understand her traditions and the way she viewed the world. This effort meant more to her than grand gestures. Still, both understood that their future required a clear choice. The promise made years ago could not remain just a memory. It needed to become something real, shaped by the people they had grown into. One morning, a letter arrived from a nearby settlement asking for help. A group of families faced difficulties after a long, dry season, and they needed someone with healing knowledge. Tala read the message quietly. She felt a strong pull to go and help, but she also worried about leaving the ranch so soon after reconnecting with Daniel. When she showed him the letter, Daniel paused for only a moment before encouraging her to go. He said that her purpose as a healer was part of who she was, and he did not want her to feel limited by staying in one place. His support touched her deeply. It showed that he was not trying to hold her back, but wanted her to follow her own path. Tala left for several days, and during that time, Daniel realized how much her presence had changed his life. The ranch felt quieter, and he caught himself looking toward the horizon, expecting to see her return. He understood that love was not just about closeness, but about trusting someone enough to let them walk their own journey. When Tala returned, she brought stories of people she had helped and lessons she had learned. Daniel listened carefully, proud of her strength. That evening, as they sat near the barn watching the sky grow dark, he felt ready to speak about the future. He told her that when he made the promise years ago, he had been grateful and hopeful, but also unsure of what life would bring. Now, after everything they experienced, he understood that the promise meant more than marriage or romantic words. It meant choosing each other again and again, even when life became complicated. Tala listened quietly, her expression calm but thoughtful. She admitted that she once wondered whether the promise had been just a moment of emotion. Yet seeing how Daniel had grown, how he learned to listen, to adapt, and to respect her independence, changed her understanding. They agreed that their relationship should be built on partnership rather than expectation. Instead of one person joining the other's world completely, they would create something new together, blending their traditions and values. News of their closeness spread through town, and people reacted in different ways. Many were happy to see Daniel smiling more than before. Others worried about change, unsure how new traditions might shape their community. Daniel faced these reactions calmly, knowing that true respect came from living honestly rather than trying to please everyone. One day, a local festival brought people together for music, food, and shared stories. Daniel invited Tala to attend, hoping to show the town how important she had become in his life. During the gathering, Tala shared a story about balance, how different paths can meet without losing their identity. Her words touched many listeners, and the atmosphere grew warm and welcoming. Later that night, as lanterns lit the open space, Daniel asked Tala to walk with him away from the crowd. They followed a familiar path to a hill overlooking the ranch. The sky stretched wide above them, filled with stars that reminded him of the canyon where everything began. He spoke slowly, choosing each word carefully. He said he did not want to repeat the promise as it was before. Instead, he wanted to make a new promise, one shaped by experience, patience, and understanding. He asked her if she would build a life with him, not as someone leaving her world behind, but as an equal partner creating a shared future. Tala stood quietly for a long moment. She looked at the land around them, then at Daniel. She saw not the young cowboy she once saved, but a man who had learned from time and hardship. She nodded gently, accepting not just the promise but the journey they would continue together. The weeks that followed felt full of new energy. They began making small changes to the ranch, creating spaces that reflected both of their traditions. Tala planted herbs near the house for healing and teaching. Daniel built a quiet outdoor area where they could sit and watch sunsets together. Their relationship did not become perfect overnight. They faced disagreements and moments of uncertainty, but instead of avoiding these challenges, they worked through them with honesty. Each conversation strengthened their trust. Eventually, they returned once more to the canyon, this time not to revisit the past, but to celebrate how far they had come. Standing at the same place where Daniel once made his first promise, they watched the sun dip below the horizon. The air felt peaceful, filled with a sense of completion. Daniel realized that some promises take years to grow into reality. Time had not broken their connection, it had shaped it into something deeper and stronger. Tala felt the same. She understood that waiting had not been wasted. It allowed both of them to become ready for what they now shared. When they rode back toward the ranch, the future felt open and hopeful. They were no longer two people connected by memory alone. They were partners walking side by side, ready to face whatever came next.